This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. The Department of Justice 71, Donald Trump 0. Is it a score in a game? Sort of. 71 witnesses are testifying against Donald Trump, at least, in the D.C. election interference criminal case. How do I know that? Because of the new filing that we just got our hands on that have been revealed by Judge Chutkan, which identify from 1 to 71 all of the witnesses that are going to be testifying or have testified already to grand juries and or to Jack Smith in his investigation, who will be corroborating and first-person precipient witnesses with knowledge testifying against Donald Trump. And if you to group it, I'm going to focus on one or two on this particular hot take, especially Deputy White House Counsel and colorful bon vivant around town, Eric Hershmann, who used to work at a major law firm, who was a partner, I think he's returned there, a major law firm that used to represent Donald Trump a long time ago, run by Mark Kasowitz. Remember the name Eric Hershmann, and if you don't remember it, I'm going to show you a couple of clips from his Jan 6 committee testimony so you know how devastating what he's told the special prosecutor and counsel is to Donald Trump. Let's start with the big number, 71. That falls into a number of categories. That's lawyers who are all on Donald Trump's payroll, private capacity, lawyers for Donald Trump's campaign, lawyers who worked in the White House, like Deputy White House Counsel Eric Hershmann, White House Counsel Pat Cipollone, Deputy White House Counsel Pat Philbin, and the list continues. That includes, and we'll just stay in lawyers for a minute, of the 71, Department of Justice employees, including the Attorney General, Bill Barr, the Acting Attorney General, Jeff Rosen, the other acting attorney general, the other acting deputy attorney general. I mean, Donald Trump went through so many attorney generals starting in December and January until he left. It's almost hard to keep track of, but you know who kept track of it? Jack Smith. We then have aides, people that worked in and around the White House for Donald Trump and others associated with Donald Trump, like Mark Meadows, like Cassidy Hutchinson and Miss Westerhoot, the people that were the eyes and ears and flies on the wall to history. They're going to testify and have already testified. That's the point I'm trying to make. They've already testified. They're going to testify again at trial. Everything I'm saying about the 71 isn't like the Department of Justice is going to call these people into the court in front of a jury and then look at each other and go, I wonder what this person's going to say. They know what this person's going to say. There's a transcript. They already gave a sworn statement or an interview or a proffer to the Department of Justice. And if they lied there, a penalty of perjury and a crime, they've testified to the grand jury in the District of Columbia against Donald Trump. You know who else knows what they're going to say? Donald Trump and his lawyers, because they've gotten all the transcripts in advance. It's only news to us exactly how all of this jigsaw puzzle was going to be assembled by Jack Smith, and now we know by the 165-page presentation. Lawyers, Department of Justice, private and campaign, aides, assistants that ran around for the various people, top people and bottom people at the campaign, Donald Trump's campaign, in the White House, that worked for Mark Meadows, that worked for others, other external, quote-unquote, advisors, like Steve Bannon. I mean, they may not be testifying against him, but there's evidence to support statements that all these people made, so they're going to end up testifying against him. Close personal aides to Donald Trump since they were teenagers, like Dan Scavino, who ran his social media and Twitter account. Not all the mean tweets came from Donald Trump. Many of them came by Dan Scavino masquerading and ghostwriting for Donald Trump. Now I want to talk about one in particular. And then we've got, of course, other officers in the campaign and that type of thing. When you total it all up, you got 71 cooperating witnesses or witnesses against Donald Trump in a sprawling new report in a way that wasn't in, if you line up the indictment, and this makes sense, the indictment next to the new report, 165 pages, there's a bit of a mismatch. The indictment, the superseding indictment, and the one that preceded it are surgical. They're surgical. They're efficient. There's not a stray word or extra word listed. There's not more evidence that needs to be disclosed to satisfy the elements to avoid dismissal. But now, because of the commands by the Supreme Court that Judge Chutkan undergo a fact-based analysis of context and evidence compared to facts in order to find out what fits into the immunity buckets, whether this Donald Trump's going to be immune or not. Then Jack Smith had to put 71 witnesses and information before the American people before the election. He had no choice. But his fault. The timing was set by the Department of Justice and Donald Trump's delays. That's why we're in October. I should have been doing this hot take in March, but I digress. Let's get to Eric Hershmann. I've done commentary and analysis on Eric Hershmann before. Colorful character, very New York, and I mean that in a good way, as also a New York lawyer. I don't know how he got his way into the White House. Many of Mark Kazowitz's law firm served in the administration of Donald Trump. I think the ambassador to Israel was another partner at that firm, and Eric Hershmann got in there as well. That's a firm that likes to be sort of politically connected. So it's a little bit of a revolving door at the time between that Kazowitz firm and Trump's White House, and this is how Eric Hershmann, I believe, got there. Now, Eric Hershmann is famous for a number of things that he told the Jan 6 committee and will testify at trial for Jack Smith. First of all, he had two interactions. I'm going to play you the clip of his testimony before the Jan 6 committee. One with John Eastman, who's that half-baked constitutional scholar, too smart by half guy who, along with Ken Chesborough, devised the plan to try to overthrow the will of the people by using fake electors and lawsuits to try to get Mike Pence to pressure him not to recognize the legitimate Biden electoral votes and give the election over to Donald Trump. That guy used to be a law professor, right? A federal judge in California already ruled that he should be stripped of his attorney-client privilege because he was participating in a fraud or crime with Donald Trump. He's been indicted. He's lost his bar license or is about to. He lost his position in the law school. That John Eastman. Did you know that 4 companies control over 80% of the U.S. meat industry? I had no idea. These companies are using mobster-like tactics to crush American family farms, and with the additives they're putting into our food, Americans are stuck with sketchy meat. And would it surprise you to know that 99% of the chicken, 95% of the pork, and 78% of cattle are raised in feedlot or confinement buildings? I was shocked. So what can we do about it? Let me tell you about a company that's coming up swinging on behalf of American family farms and your family's food security. Moink. Their farmers are given an honest day's pay for an honest day's work, and they deliver meat straight to your doorstep at prices you can actually afford. Keep American family farms farming by joining the Moink movement today at moinkbox.com/legalaf. Sign up today and get free hot rolls in your first order, spelled MOINK, box.com/legalaf. Oink, oink, get moinked. moinkbox.com/legalaf. And there's a conversation between Eric Hershmann that I've known about and John Eastman towards the end. Because one of Eric Hershmann's major jobs that he testified to, no doubt to the special counsel, was to regularly, daily update Trump directly with updates about the quote-unquote fraud investigations in the battleground states to see if there was any outcome dispositive fraud, which there was not. And every day, Eric Hershmann and Pat Cipollone would tell Donald Trump, can't find any fraud. All these fraud theories are ridiculous. If you bring in, this is Eric Hershmann now to Donald Trump, if you bring these fraud theories into a courtroom, they're going to get laughed at because they're bullshit. That is a direct quote from Eric Hershmann. Why is that testimony important? Because it shows you the criminal mind of Donald Trump, that he was told information that he was willfully blind and buried his head in the sand to avoid knowing. And knowing that information from people that he paid, the people of trust in the White House, he went on television. He went in social media. He's continuing to maintain that he thinks there was outcome determinative fraud and he should have won the election when he knows from that alone and forensic audits that he paid for from outside vote examiners who told him the same thing, that there was no outcome determinative fraud. That goes to mens rea for Donald Trump. Eric Hershmann has a conversation with John Eastman where John Eastman raises again some crazy lawsuit that he wants to file in one of the battleground states, and John Eastman cuts him off at the knees with a withering comment, and we have a clip for you here. Let's play it.
It was the day after Eastman, I don't remember why he called me, and or he texted me or called me, wanted to talk with me, and he said he couldn't reach others. And he started to ask me about something dealing with Georgia and preserving something potentially for appeal. And I said to him, "Are you out of your effing mind?" Right? I said, "I only want to hear two words coming out of your mouth from now on: orderly transition." And I screamed, I said, "I don't want to hear any other effing words coming out of your mouth, no matter what, other than orderly transition. Repeat those words to me." And I screamed that, and he said, eventually he said, "Orderly transition." I said, "Good, John. Now I'm going to give you the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it." And then I hung up on him.
Okay. All I want to hear is peaceful transfer of power out of your mouth. And here's some free legal advice. Get a criminal defense lawyer. Boy, was Eric Hershmann right about that. The second interaction where they're going to use Eric Hershmann is in his interactions with Rudy Giuliani, who he famously named and titled Captain Crazy. He was captain of Team Crazy. And Giuliani, who was brought in apparently, according to this new filing, by Steve Bannon, the right-wing MAGA podcaster, QAnon conspiracy theorist, who had a lot bigger role in the pressure campaign against Mike Pence than was ever first known until this filing. Bannon also apparently brought in Giuliani and anointed him captain of Team Crazy. And on Team Crazy, we had, this list of 71 witnesses, including another 6 co-conspirators. Rudy Giuliani lost his bar license twice and indicted twice. Sidney Powell, indicted once and pled guilty. Ken Chesborough, indicted twice and pled guilty once. Jenna Ellis, pled guilty. And we could go on. There are others. And so there's this conversation, which I love, that was reported and testified to the Jan 6 committee by this same Eric Hershmann. And I want to play you that clip. Let's play that clip.
Said about his call with Mayor Giuliani on the morning of the 6th.
The morning of January 6th, I think he called me out of the blue, right? And I was getting dressed. And we had an intellectual discussion about Eastman's, I don't know if it's Eastman's theory per se, but the VP's role. And he was asking me my view and analysis and then the practical implications of it. And when we finished, he said, "I believe that, you're probably right." I think he thought when we're done that it would be something he'd have to consider if he was sitting on the bench, but he'd probably come down in that, you couldn't interpret it or sustain the argument long term.
71-0. That's what we're watching. And it's the reason this list, I could do 71 hot takes on each and every of these witnesses. Now they're numbered, but we know who they are. And don't get excited. I know some people are like, don't out everybody. The ones I'm going to out, don't worry. They're all MAGA, dyed in the wool, true believers. Number one, literally number one in the new filing by Jack Smith is Bannon. Number 21, Mark Meadows. Number 45, Dan Scavino, who did all of his mean posting and tried to implore Donald Trump to stop the violence and stop the rioting. Only he could do it, and he didn't do it. Number 4, Jason Miller, still works closely with Donald Trump. Number 52, former Attorney General Bill Barr, who left after Jan 6th and started the revolving door. And I could go on. And maybe on our next podcast on Legal AF, I will. But I wanted to focus on somebody like Eric Hershmann so that you understand. Now multiply him and make him a 5, 6, 7 hour testimony about everything that he saw in the White House, advising Trump without attorney-client privilege being asserted, because it can't be, it's been stripped away. Make him testify in front of that jury, and now multiply that by 70 more people. Every day, think of the trial. This trial is going to be a 6 to 8 month trial. It's just going to be weeks devoted. I think there's many different ways. I'll talk about this as a trial lawyer. There's many different ways that the government can present their evidence. They can do it chronologically and bring in the witnesses on that. They could do it thematically, or they could do it by title. And if you did it by title, by position, there would be like 2 weeks of nothing but lawyers against Donald Trump. His lawyers against him now. White House lawyers like Eric Hershmann, campaign lawyers, private lawyers, Department of Justice lawyers. That takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks of time. Then it's like executive assistants and aides to the president at the time, or people around the president, or Mike Pence at the time, and bring all of them in. Then bring in people who are fact witnesses like Michael Ludig, a judge, conservative, Republican, icon, constitutional scholar, defender of the presidency, regularly appears with me on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF for interviews, because he's the one that Steve Bannon, #1 on the hit parade, said, F him, F that lawyer advising Pence not to recognize Donald Trump's fake electors. F him. Well, we'll bring on the guy that he said F him to, and we'll have an interview with him really soon. I'm arranging it right now. So then you got those kind of people. Then you've got the, after you get through the lawyer, you got the elected officials, Mike Pence, all the people that Donald Trump picked up the phone and called, all the people that were hunkering under their desks, including Republicans, while the Capitol's rioted and sieged, all the people that ran in to Donald Trump to try to convince him to call off the dogs, and he wouldn't. His former press secretaries and media advisors. Everybody's going to have an R next to their name. There won't be a Democrat for like maybe the entire trial testifying. How is it political? All the witnesses against him are Republicans, including ones he put on the payroll and hired. And so there'll be weeks of elected officials and election officials in the battleground states and speakers of the House and secretaries of state of the various states that Donald Trump picked up the phone and called. And so on, and so on, and so on, filling out the rest of the 71. We'll continue to follow it and give you our perspective without blowing smoke or sunshine on Legal AF. Find out what 40 million people a month already know, that Legal AF is the home of legal and political commentary and analysis like no other. We have so much to talk about. MeidasTouch and Legal AF got together and formed a new channel. We call it Legal AF MTN for MeidasTouch Network. Go on YouTube, free subscribe. We're going to hit, this is like a record, we're going to hit 200,000 subscribers in the first month of our existence with your help, of course. And I'm personally inviting you to a free subscribe and join us. That's where I'll be curating, and as the executive producer, all of the type of analysis and commentary you've come to love. I'll be bringing over people from the Meidas universe, other legal and political commentators, and outside voices you haven't heard from yet. I don't want to spoil it. We got a big group, a pro-democracy, court accountability there, a group that's going to come join us and do regular updates over there. We got an exclusive new show called Unprecedented. Once a week, we're going to look at the United States Supreme Court top to bottom, side to side, including its ethics scandals, things that they hear in oral argument, their rulings, the things they don't rule on, how they get to those rulings, and all on Unprecedented, only on Legal AF MTN. So free subscribe there. And until my next hot take and my next Legal AF podcast, this is Michael Popok, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.